Hello everybody and welcome once again to an Unearthly Podcast. We've got here Randy, Thomas, and Matt. Flynn hasn't been able to make it, but we're hoping he's going to make it in.
We'll wait and see.
Yep, for those of you just tuning in, an Unearthly Podcast is a Star's End production in association with Mad Inc. and Fireheart Inc. Today we're talking about who would win, a Sour Patch Kid or a Jelly Baby.
I think the Jelly Babies win.
We're actually talking about the Fifth Doctor adventure, Earthshock.
Alright. The Fifth Doctor and his companions, Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric, materialize in a cave on Earth in the 25th century. Adric is having a bit of a snit about wanting to return to his own home in the E-space, another reality. The Doctor doesn't want to do this because going there is very dangerous. So Adric decides to stay in the TARDIS and try to work a way to convince the Doctor to take him home, while the Doctor and the others go out and explore. Turns out there's been a series of murders in this cave. And there's a military unit currently investigating the deaths. They run into the Doctor, accuse the Doctor of being the bad guy, at which point they're attacked by the real bad guys who turn out to be androids. The androids seem to be protecting this plate on a wall, which the Doctor eventually gets into and discovers it's a bomb. After a little bit of hairiness, they defuse the bomb, which was being activated remotely from a signal going somewhere in space. The Doctor, his companions, and a good chunk of the military force all decide to track this signal back into space, where they discover it's on a freighter, bound for Earth. The Doctor goes out and investigates, gets captured by I guess the chief of security on the ship, I'm not really sure what his position was, and taken to the captain. After which, the bad guys come out, which turns out to be the Cybermen. The Cybermen have this nasty evil plan to... Originally it was going to kill the population of Earth with a bomb, but failing that, they're going to turn the ship into a big bomb and crash it into the Earth, destroying this peace conference that would have destroyed the cyber fleets. So, they proceed to start taking over the ship bit by bit. This doesn't take them long, as most of the defenders of the ship are not military, and their attempts to destroy the Cybermen are pretty much futile. The Doctor manages to stop them briefly on the bridge, but only for a few minutes before they come in, capture everybody, rig the ship so it's stuck on course, protected by a series of blocks, and then forces the Doctor and Tegan back onto the TARDIS, which he's going to use to watch the sparks fly. Adric is forced to remain on the ship. It's not long before they manage to subdue the two Cybermen there, and Adric thinks he can undo these logic locks to get them to control the ship back. He manages to remove two of them. The first one begins the ship drifting backwards in time. And then they go back about 65 million years, where the Doctor realizes that this is part of history, that the ship crashing into the Earth is actually the extinction of the dinosaurs. However, Adric refuses to leave because he thinks he can actually trigger the third lock and save the ship and everybody. Unfortunately, he doesn't do this, and the ship explodes. The Cybermen are foiled. Pretty much end of the story. The show actually ends with a scene of Adric's broken badge for mathematical excellence, and it's the only time in Doctor Who history where there is no end music. It's absolute dead silence. It's probably one of the most tragic moments ever in Doctor Who history.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've done the summary, can I give a little backstory?
Time for backstory.
This episode was written for the 1982 broadcast season of Doctor Who. It is the first time the Cybermen had appeared since 1975.
Which sadly was actually kind of a weak sauce episode.
But that episode, the previous episode, Revenge of the Cybermen, was the first time the Cybermen had appeared since the second Doctor episode, The Invasion, in late 1968.
which was epic and has an animated copy out on DVD.
But not the point, Matt.
Second Doctor,
That
how many
means-
times?
They fought him at least 4 times, I think.
That means, though, other than the one-off episode, it had been almost 14 years since the Cybermen had been a regular Doctor Who villain. Now, what this meant for the production staff is that most of the people that are watching didn't really know who the Cybermen was.
The few that did had, like, maybe the art books or something, or some
Exactly.
Cliff Note picture books from
Actually,
older
most of those
episodes.
weren't until after this episode came out, Matt.
Actually, I heard a lot of little kids knew what Cybermen were, but hadn't seen them in a really long time.
Yes. So this gave the production staff, which was John Nathan Turner, a chance to remake the Cybermen for the 80s. And boy did they do so. They completely redesigned the Cybermen outfits, changed the voices of the Cybermen. Again, this wasn't unusual since almost every incarnation has had a change in either voice or outfit or both.
Mm-hmm.
This was also the first episode that featured David, did someone order a large ham, Banks as the Cyber leader, a role he would do in The Five Doctors, Attack of the Cybermen, and Silver Nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much through the end of it. This is the man who tried to coin the phrase "excellent" as a Cybermen catchphrase.
He tried his darndest, darn it.
I actually counted when I watched this episode today.
Mr. Burns in that regard.
David Banks said excellent 6 times over the course of this serial.
So at least once every serial episode.
No, well, the Cybermen really weren't in the first episode, serial episode, except for a blurb at the end of the first episode where, you kind of realize they're the big bads. The dramatic reveal.
Destroy them.
That's exactly
That
cut to the scene through the android's eyes and they zooming in on the Doctor's face. It's like, destroy them! That's all that was there. But the second serial, he said it twice. The third one, he said it twice. And the fourth one, he said it twice. So he was really working hard to make that a catchphrase.
And he probably continued to do it so in his preceding episodes, at least a couple of times.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on the episodes?
What?
On the serial in general, the 6-parter.
Yes.
It's actually one of the few Doctor Who serials I actually own for the classic Who, and to be honest, it was my first and I quite liked it. There's a few minor little ticks here and there, but generally and overall, there are a hell of a lot worse episodes from classic Who. So I'd range this just above mid-range.
Bill?
I would pretty much agree with Matt. I mean, I went into this knowing pretty much all that I knew about it was that Flynn did not like it. I did not realize until toward the end of it that it had been the one that you had been discussing about. I'm not sure if I had realized that it had been the one you were discussing about Adric dying and whatnot. But
this was the first time you'd seen Adric?
Yes.
Which makes his end episode your first episode. Which means
Actually, it was mine too.
Watching the rest of those episodes now because you know how it ends.
Actually, that was the same with me too originally. Because again, I got this. This was my first DVD, and then I finally went back and watched all the old
It was
stuff.
the same thing. I started watching the first Doctor knowing how he would end and knowing how Susan would end and such, but...
Any thoughts, Thomas?
Any thoughts, Thomas?
Let's see. I think I'm the same too. That this is the first actual, like, obviously new. I think I've seen like bits and pieces of other stuff Adric had been in, but that was probably just in like reviews that Nash had done or something.
Oh, that's right. I
Maybe.
did. Well, yeah. If you're gonna mention Nash, I did know of Adric through Nash's review of what's it called?
That doesn't help.
That doesn't help.
The Regeneration episode. I haven't seen the episode myself. That's why the name.
Logopolis?
Yeah, exactly. No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
The Logopolis was the one preceding that.
Well, they're basically Logopolis and Castrovalva are the regeneration episodes.
I wasn't 100% sure though.
Yeah, Castrovalva is
the Peter Davidson end, where Logopolis is the Tom Baker end.
Right.
Not end.
I had first heard of Adric through Nash's review of Castrovalva, and I was wondering why there was a kid with super mathematical powers.
Yeah,
that's
always his gimmick. Mind you, Adric was Wesley Crusher before Star Trek The Next Generation invented Wesley Crusher.
because
for a lot of the season and a half he was in.
One at a time.
Was either the solution to the problem
or the cause.
The more Doctor Who I watched, the more I think that The Next Generation was caused by an American just watching a whole bunch of Doctor Who and thinking, hey, we should bring Star Trek back and copy all these ideas.
Not possible.
When I was
watching this episode today, I've watched this episode a dozen times. I own it on DVD. This was the first time, though, I'd actually watched it with a critical eye.
Other times I was just watching it
for my fanboy nature.
Going,
oh yeah, I remember this episode. I remember crying when Adric died. Yeah.
But I watched with a critical eye,
and it's like, yeah. There's a lot here that pretty much says this was Doctor Who in the early 80s. First of all, the Space Force is seen as fairly gritty and slightly dystopian. This comes because the fact that there was another science fiction series around this time called Blake 7.
And it had a
very big influence on how the future was seen
by many of
the people that were writing and producing for Doctor Who.
So a lot of the outfits
had this kind of militaristic dystopian view to it, and you can see that all the way through to Peter Davidson's final episode.
Where you have the military
versus Shera's Jack in Caves of Androzani,
and they're also that
fairly grim, gritty, dystopian military style.
Have the mouth of a cackling jackalips, I believe was the phrase coined during that story. Something along that line.
And you can also
tell by the music, a lot of the synthesizer music and everything.
They started using synthesizer a lot.
It says this is early 80s science fiction.
And it's true.
It's true with Doctor Who. You can tell what era of Doctor Who you're watching just by listening to the incidental music.
Pretty much.
Well, you can also tell by the special effects because in the late 70s they actually started adding explosions.
There are plenty in here.
There's plenty of the gunshot effects, which were
there are plenty of sparks and fireworks.
To the next encounter, until they were upgraded for Silver Nemesis.
I don't know if it's just the implicit then. I kind of got the impression that the Pertwee era would have explosions.
Pertwee? They
blew up models.
Yeah, they blew up models. That's about it.
Yeah.
Then it kind of died down.
And then it came back again.
Came
back big time with Tom Baker. I remember a lot of models blew the hell up.
In Tom Baker's first episode, they have like a bunch of explosions set off.
It was also
the Pertwee era that they started to add blue screening.
Or they'd have the scene done
in front of a blue screen and then fill in the background that way.
And it's such
an early attempt at blue screening that you look at it now and you're like, oh yeah, that's a blue screen.
That's so an overlay.
Yeah, can tell right now.
And you can also tell when they switched outdoor and indoor cameras, but that's another story.
There's a lot of things in
here.
That were like that. There's
one thing that they had to do
early in the second episode.
It's because the fact that
they knew that a lot of the people that were 14 or less that were watching Doctor Who, which was their target audience, didn't know who the Cybermen were entirely. They had to go through this little summary of the Doctor fighting the Cybermen. So they brought.
I think we discussed this briefly. It was a season premiere, wasn't it? Or no? No, maybe we discussed something else.
What? But I think that's something else.
Yeah, I think that's something else.
I just remember thinking about it being one of those episodes that is a good way to get used to the idea of the Doctor regenerating. Not only do the companions mention it, but the Cybermen both mention it and show different variations of the Doctor.
But that's not what I was actually bringing.
Actually, I think Nash brought that up.
What I was bringing up was they were focusing on the fact that they recognized the Doctor by the TARDIS.
It occurred to me as I was watching this that I don't think the Cybermen have actually ever seen the TARDIS.
Yes, they have. First Doctor.
They literally had to walk past.
it in order to get into the base.
Yes, were destroyed. I don't think any of them survived.
All of those Cybermen were destroyed, but they knew what was happening because they showed scenes of Hartnell talking.
Yes.
They wouldn't have recognized that
as being the TARDIS.
I'm sure they've seen it once
or twice during the second Doctor era. The third Doctor.
I'm trying to remember.
I don't know if they saw it during the fourth Doctor.
The moon base, the TARDIS was landed off the moon base where everything happened.
I only know this because I've read the book.
The actual episode itself has been lost to history.
Then I don't think the Cybermen
showed up again until Tomb of the Cybermen, when the TARDIS materialized, it was away from the Telos main facility.
Again, no
seeing of the TARDIS there.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Wheel in Space.
And this is the one I'm not sure of.
I have never seen this episode.
I have never read the book summary. It's one of the few episodes I have not.
Wheel in Space. Is that the one where they're
I can't remember now which one this is.
Zoe, Matt.
The one where they pick up Zoe. I think I've seen tidbits of it. I can't say I've seen the entire episode.
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces. I've seen bits and pieces of it as like an extra on a
DVD or something. Yeah, that's because the whole episode doesn't exist.
Which they need to fix.
They need to fix it for all the episodes. They need to have enough to reconstruct the lost episodes from.
All the audio's there.
Do the trick.
Literally all the audio's
out there. Just ask the fans.
If they don't have video, it's very hard to draw an approximation of what the video was based on 3 production stills from a half-hour piece.
Also helps if they had a script. Anyway,
I've just never managed to get that pocketbook episode or the Target book episode of that.
But I don't remember them
thinking that they'd seen the TARDIS in that.
That takes us to the invasion. Where the Cybermen came out of the sewers in London. They were in London
in the 60s, and it was a police box.
Not to mention, I believe the
TARDIS in that particular storyline was actually made invisible.
So again, you see it. Revenge of the Cybermen. Where the TARDIS was still returning to their location, Space Station Nerva, from the future, and hadn't arrived until the very end of the last episode of the serial, making the Cybermen
unable to have seen or
recognize the TARDIS in that episode.
So they have seen it at least a grand total of once,
but with that once was the first time they encountered the Doctor.
Which would have just been a blue shed. They see the TARDIS from the image of the android, and David Banks goes, "I've seen this before. What is it? It is a TARDIS."
Now, I've noticed that you don't mention that the TARDIS index file mentions Cybermen appearing in Legopolis just a year before this. Would they have... I don't know to what extent...
No Cybermen in Legopolis.
No Cybermen in Legopolis.
This wiki is under the impression that they at least appeared.
Then that wiki's smoking crack.
Legopolis,
Legopolis, there's... That was the fifth Doctor episode, wasn't it?
The final episode of the fourth Doctor.
Yeah, they definitely went there.
Appeared in the making of that episode.
It was, either a hallucination or a flashback by the Doctor. Okay, yes. It says the visions of the enemy's mocking.
That was his death flashback.
Life flashed before his eyes and there were Cybermen.
Still from Revenge of the Cybermen.
And basically having the thing go, Doctor.
That was it.
Just like the Brigadier showed up,
K9 showed up, Sarah Jane showed up, both Romanas.
So in other words, no, they did not get a chance.
A lot of things showed up in post.
Typically, it was just the montage of various bad guys going, Doctor, Doctor,
no, they did not get a chance to see the TARDIS.
And friends.
As the fight to regeneration
or just die went through the Doctor's body.
Is this one of those seasons where the writers would have been inclined to give a crap about whether or not Cybermen had appeared in comics or other things of that nature?
General rule for any
Doctor Who serial is if it's appeared outside television,
it can't be a general
never
rule
mentioned.
Because otherwise we never would have gotten the Dalek Emperor in an episode, because that was introduced through comics.
What's that?
The Dalek Emperor.
What's that?
That was introduced in
Power of the Daleks.
That was the second Doctor episode.
Or was it third episode?
Or third serial.
I think it was the second serial for the second Doctor.
No, the second serial had nothing to do with Daleks. The first and the third did.
I remember
This must have been the first.
Highlanders, where he picked up Jamie.
The Dalek Handbook produced by the BBC mentioning that the Dalek Emperor was mentioned in other episodes, basically because it had appeared in the comics and fans would be able to make that connection.
But they never
reference what happened in comics.
That's just the writers.
Basically, that's just the writers of the series. Dalek Emperor's a good idea. We're going to steal that and put it in this episode.
But they don't specifically say that the events of that comic book ever happened.
Yeah.
It's just them going, oh, that's kind of a good idea.
We'll borrow that. Thank you.
It's just like if I was starting a science fiction series and, oh, wow, the idea of a super powerful, omnipotent being that wreaks havoc on my characters is a good idea. I like Q from Star Trek. Use him in this.
I just noticed we just spent how long discussing something. Doctor Who continuity has never been so strict that they would actually give a crap if the Cybermen had ever seen the TARDIS or not.
Yeah, still one of those things that I find to be a plot hole.
I see you,
because usually you and I see eye to eye on this, but I'm just thinking about it, like, this is Doctor Who. Of all the things to talk about, this is probably not the thing the producers paid any attention to.
Probably not. It's just something I noticed.
Probably not. It's just something I noticed.
It was just them making cool connections back to those episodes. That's all it's really about.
Things that seem to be a first for the Cybermen. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Cybermen, one, building androids that are not Cybermen, and two, going from not being in the show for years to all of a sudden having a massive fleet that is at war with multiple planets at once. Both of those kind of struck me a little surprising.
Being at war with a lot
of people is not first.
Time travel?
Doctor Who, time travel? We know at some point there's a massive cyber war.
So this was already established in earlier serials? So you're saying this is already established in earlier serials?
Yes, Revenge of the Cybermen mentions
the fact that there's this huge cyber war that is only ended when the planet of gold, Voga, gets involved and supplies the Allied forces with
ammo to make their glitter guns, which basically makes the cyber.
This is the episode where the Cybermen try to prevent such an alliance from ever occurring.
Probably, yes. Although
the
fact that they know what happens means that this would have to happen after that episode.
Or be something that was going
to be happening during this episode.
And they're trying to because they show images from Revenge of the Cybermen. They show Tom Baker's face. Cyber leader about them being a bunch of.
Cybermen is supposed to be set in.
That I actually didn't look up.
That I actually didn't look up. I'm not sure it was specified.
Main setting is 2875. So Revenge of the Cybermen is set after Earthshock.
And yet they show scenes, and yet the
Cybermen are not supposed to have time travel until Attack of the Cybermen.
Or random freighter bringing cargo to Earth had time travel. One of the two.
Well,
I find it easy.
Well, it did because it would have swung back. That was the hyperdrive screwing up.
Technically speaking,
that was their warp drive.
That was their warp drive messing up after they've only gotten part of a lockout.
One of the dinosaurs. I can't imagine the Millennium Falcon wouldn't have, discovered the Big Bang by now.
By becoming the Big Bang.
The way they explain it is the fact that there is now an alien cyber system attached to the ship trying to keep it on course while they're trying to make this adjustment. They've only gotten it partially unhinged.
And because of these two conflicting
orders, it makes the ship do the impossible.
This is Doctor Who. I can actually go.
This is Doctor Who. I can actually go with that.
And to be honest, I got to go with the fact that the Cybermen and Earthshock could be time travelers, just that they don't really decide to mention it.
He could have just Sonic'd it and there would have been no problem.
Yeah, but hands-free by this point.
Actually, the fourth Doctor never cybered
Sonic'd
anyone.
Well, the thing
you have to remember for you later generation people, hey kids, get off my lawn speech number 6 coming. Is the fact that
not a multi-tool in the original series.
You can still use it as a sonic crowbar to say get off the ship. Get off this computer to whatever cyber device.
Possibly. The fact that it had some kind of logic lock on it,
he could have used the screwdriver to physically remove it, but whether that would have caused the whole thing to explode is another matter.
The Mark V should have made it get up and do the Macarena, but...
Basically, the entire function of the sonic screwdriver for the duration of the series was more or less a lock.
The other thing, the androids, was that a precedent here, or in terms of
androids were new, but having cybernetic or robotic things to use to scout out and attack people, not new.
Well, yeah, they had the cyber mats before, but we never really knew what the cyber mats were. They looked like little rats.
They looked like little...
But we didn't know whether it was an organic component to cyber mats or not.
They looked like little robotic slugs to me, but yeah.
Yeah, what I've seen is basically got the impression of being a cyber mat.
Regardless of what you think they look like, there's no telling whether they were fully robotic or whether there was a bio component to those.
So yeah, the cyborgs
not completely new, but it's the first time they went for humanoid size.
Which kind of
sure.
Yes. I don't know if it would be interesting to do a more in-depth look at the Cybermen of this era, like were they just so strapped for bodies that they had to build androids and didn't have enough, organic components to fuel their army, and they had to make androids for that, or if there was something else involved with that.
It could just be that they were trying to make it look
like it wasn't them.
It was
someone didn't manage to run away.
It was, in fact, the fact that they were trying to go for a low profile on Earth to set the bomb. Somebody sees a Cyberman on Earth, it's a big deal considering that they're the enemy.
If it's a cyborg, wow, it's just some
random terrorists. Quick, kill the cyborgs.
Cyberman there who, had some sort of mask or, looked different than the, a stealth spy version of the Cybermen. I mean, surely they had the technology.
Yeah, but then
Yeah, but then you also have the technology to make something that's a little less like a Cyberman, but still very easily controllable. So why risk it when you can have something that's very easily controlled?
And besides, from a writing standpoint, then you don't get to do the big reveal at the end of the first episode.
Deploy Cybermen, why not only deploy androids and have the Cybermen sit back and watch?
And in fact, the big reveal is pretty much a standard Doctor Who plot.
I also love the fact that there was actually
originally a different title for this episode, but they went, no, that's giving it away. Stop that. We're calling it Earth something with Earth exploding. Earthshock. Yes. As a matter of fact, they even had to stop people from being able to publicly visit the Doctor Who sets in order to keep the fact that the Cybermen were in this episode a secret.
Yes, according to Wikipedia, you're
right. I heard about that.
Yes, according to Wikipedia, you're right, Matt. The working title for this story was Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they had to go. They were just
going everywhere they could to try and keep this a secret. Although I think it was leaked like about a week before the episode aired.
It came for naught for like about half.
So it came for naught for like about half the British public, but they managed to keep it for that long and caught everyone off guard just a week beforehand.
Actually, I think they kept it a rather surprise. The Radio Times wanted to do advanced publicity for it. John Nathan Turner told them no, which resulted in the fact that the Radio Times only gave one cover to Doctor Who during the entire tenure of John Nathan Turner from 89, and that was the 5 Doctors.
The big anniversary, yep.
Yep, the big anniversary, yep.
That one will let slip, it's a big one.
Well, I don't think
that one will let slip, it's a big one.
Part of the story, like I can see why they did it. The whole spiel about the dinosaurs in the beginning of the first episode, it kind of makes sense once you've completed the serial. But in terms of just watching it as a linear story, I would say that is definitely the slowest, weakest, and most pointless part of the serial.
Well, yeah, it's kind of almost a Schrodinger's gun in a way.
But also they make mention a little bit of the cavemen, which was the second Hartnell story.
They're not really referencing that, Matt.
Maybe they're trying to pull
they kind of give a wink to it, though.
That's what I meant, Chekhov's gun. My brain is not.
That's what I meant, Chekhov's gun. My brain is not quite functioning.
Yeah, it's trying to do.
Sorry.
Not really a Chekhov's gun.
It's trying to do not really a Chekhov's gun,
book.
But I'd say more of a Chekhov's book.
Because it's not really so much a device or tool. That comes up at the end. It's more of a
this history happened. We have no reason to bring this up, but goddamn, it happened.
Should really go back and look at that someday.
I know there's
I made it happen.
I cannot remember the name of it. Which I know for shame.
You should know my tropes.
Mea culpa. I should know my tropes.
As I was watching the episode, it was getting to, I think, to the end of the second serial. Can this get any
it's
more
like,
cliche?
Oh God. Can this get any more cliche?
The doctor's running around the cargo hold.
The doctor's running around the cargo hold, turns a corner, finds some dead bodies, and is immediately found by security. Since he did it.
We know better than this.
We know better than this.
I've seen this in Doctor Who history.
Everywhere.
But in Doctor Who in particular, I can think of Tom Baker serial.
At least a half dozen Tom Baker serials.
The Doctor's identity kind of lends itself to that. You know, he's always the hitchhiker. He's always the guy who's not where he's supposed to be. He's always going to get caught in bullshit and blamed as the outsider.
The king of bad timing.
The king of bad timing.
And of course, the TARDIS is pretty much out to get him when it comes to placing him in situations where he can get caught like that.
You've been reading that comic again, haven't you?
You've been reading that comic again, haven't you?
It is true, though.
She admitted it.
The TARDIS is sitting there, the Earth is going to explode. Let's go there, even though the Doctor wants to go to a tropical paradise. Screw the tropical paradise, Earth is going to explode. Let's visit. I think if anything, really, the TARDIS is like the savior of humanity.
She just kind of places Doctor there to get in trouble.
She just kind of places Doctor there to get in trouble and work things out.
But watching the acting of this, I think the acting of this episode was fairly decent.
Acting-wise,
for the time that it was made.
Acting-wise, the only complaint I really had was actually the captain. She just didn't seem to fit that role very well.
Basic, the working captain who is, she's there to get her bonus.
Yeah, that's the thing you have to remember, Matt. This is not a Federation ship. The thing you have to remember, Matt. This is not a Federation ship. This is not a military ship. It's a freighter.
Yeah.
This is a freighter. It's essentially...
I would expect more rough and tumble out of a freighter
I would expect more rough and tumble out of a freighter
pirates.
Group, though.
We're not talking pirates.
Yeah, but still...
but still, it's a freighter.
Semi-truck drivers of the universe.
It's like the freaking semi-truck drivers of the universe, dude.
I'm compare it to the similar group that we see in Alien and seeing if there's anything that I think one does better than the other.
I'm just saying they're the semi-truck drivers of the universe.
I'm just saying they're the semi-truck drivers of the universe. I think they'd be a little more rough and tumble than this. I think they would know way too much about
shotgun. I imagine this is probably at least tangentially related to budget, but I think that the way they talk about the crew would have been a little bit more effective if we saw like a few truck driver type crew members just, walking around bitching or complaining, or at least just physically being there.
They were the guards that got killed by the Cybermen. We did. They were the guards that got killed by the Cybermen.
They talk about the crew as though there's
see them a little more often.
Probably a couple dozen. At least that's how I understood it. But we only see maybe, 5? I don't think we see even 10. I don't think we see 10 people throughout the entire episode.
We do when we see the body pile up at the end. We do when we see the body pile up at the end of them fighting the Cybermen trying to take the bridge.
True.
And then after that, they're all dead.
So I wouldn't be half surprised if half those guys were then being put in Cyberman suits. So yeah,
probably. It would have been nice to see, one person with low morale.
It would have been nice to have been seen like the rec room. Well, it would have been nice to have been seen like the rec room.
Or something.
The one problem with that is the problem that Doctor Who had in this area. The one problem with that is the problem that Doctor Who had in this area. That would have meant hiring more people.
I mean, that's
and also getting more
television, because movies never seem to have the problem. If you go out and put up a sign, you want to be an extra in Doctor Who, show up. Of course, then there's a security issue with an episode like this.
And also the fact that there is rules about that. And also the fact that there is rules about that. Ask the Screen Actors Guild. Yes, there is. Okay. Ask the Screen Actors Guild. You show up in an episode of something, you get paid. You show up in an episode of something, you get paid. And if you're not a member of the Screen Actors Guild, you're in trouble. You get sued. Then you pay. You get sued. The only clause is people that win contests. Only clause that is that is people that win contests. And then they have to sign a waiver. The episode, the contest where it's like... the contest where it's like... Win a walk-in scene on this movie.
Like they had for like one of the Soul movies.
Sort of like they had for like one of the Soul movies. I think they had a TV show about that actually. It was like some reality show where some chick got a role in like the 6th Soul movie or something.
There's this whole runaround about there's this whole runaround about you having to sign a waiver to make sure that you're not going to be credited in the credits. You're not going to be credited in the credits. You're not going to be that. And that's the thing with the BBC. Anybody that shows up in the show gets credited. Even if you don't speak. One of the things they talked about, Attack of the Cybermen or Tomb of the Cybermen, Attack of the Cybermen or Tomb of the Cybermen DVD, Cyber Controller, talking with the guy that played the Cyber Controller, was back when they were doing Tomb, the original role was time with
all
the
he
lyrics.
had to do was open his mouth in time with the lyrics, and he managed to swing it past the Screen Actors Guild to opening his mouth constituted speaking words, and got himself upgraded to being paid for a speaking part.
So, yeah, whether you're on there for an unpaid
whether you're on there for an unpaid or a non-speaking or speaking role, you get paid.
And that does take you out,
and that does take you out, and that does cost them production money. So really, when you're looking at Doctor Who, you're looking at a small them doing things by small budget play roles.
Visible roles as possible.
So as few visible roles as possible.
I have to admit, as kind of tragic as Adric's
death is, I was kind of just like, womp 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 when he finally.
What annoys me
what annoys me about it. I mean, Adric was a companion.
He went through some hell.
He did his part. He went through some hell.
By the Master in
Castrovalva. He was freaking tortured by the Master in Castrovalva. To freaking do his bidding.
And yeah, he had kind of this whiny boy relationship.
And yeah, he had kind of this whiny boy relationship with the current Doctor in a few episodes. At one point, he sides with the bad guys in For the Doomsday. So he's had his ins and outs and all this problem, and he dies for no reason. I mean, I can see the heroic death of dying for a sacrifice.
He was trying to save the dinosaurs.
Yes, but when all the numbers are tumbled up, that death is still futile.
When all the numbers are tumbled up, that death is still futile. He died trying to prevent something that had to happen.
He died being right about being wrong.
He died being right about being wrong.
Which kind of sums up Adric in a way, but not in the good way.
Pretty much from the first few lines of this episode, it's pretty clear that he has a good chance of dying at the end. I mean, of the serial.
Want to go home. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty clear he doesn't have a good shot of surviving anyway.
Yeah.
He definitely put his effort in to make it a heroic death. You can pretty much tell he wants to go back to East Base. The Doctor doesn't. It's too dangerous. He's gonna die.
Yeah, but you notice about halfway through he said, "Yeah, I'm over that."
Yeah, but you notice about halfway through he said, "Yeah, I'm over that."
I could write it up.
I just it up to see if I could write it up.
For the second half of it, he's back being part of the crew.
So for the second half of it, he's back being part of the crew.
That cloud hanging over his head that he signed his own death sentence in the beginning of the serial. And I mean, that might not be as clear in the 80s, but in the age of TV tropes, that's pretty much what he did.
But when somebody is going to die, generally,
generally, especially like that, you usually make their death worthwhile.
Was not the fact that he died.
And that was, I think, what pissed people off the most was not the fact that he died.
He was doing his best to save 25th century, 9 billion people? That's who he was trying to save. He didn't.
Oh no, he knew he was back in time.
Did he?
Oh, yes.
No, he knew he was back in time.
There was a scene.
Oh yes.
Where they knew they were drifting backwards.
There was a scene.
I don't know if he
where they knew they were drifting backwards in time. I don't know if he knew how far.
I know the Doctor knew they were drifting backwards
and back again.
Specifically how far.
Drifting backwards in time because he was trying to lock on. But
right. Doctor knew he was drifting backwards in time because he was trying to lock on. But yeah, mentions it, and
that's impossible. And Adric's like,
they're trying to figure out why the captain's going. But that's impossible. And Adric's like, look, you've got an alien device wired into your ship trying to take control.
Impossible happened.
Between that, something impossible happened.
Basically, from the moment the Doctor left that bridge with Tegan and the Cyber Leader,
Adric tries his best to act like the Doctor.
This is his moment to shine.
Which is pretty much a common
this is his moment to shine.
Not really at that point, no. This was his moment to shine.
Not really at that point, no.
He tries to do it.
This was his moment to shine. And he tries to do it,
gets himself killed,
and in the end, he gets himself killed, not even able to succeed in doing something that was inherently wrong in the first place.
I'm kind of glad they at least left in the Cybermen shooting it out, so it was like, well, even if he had, he can't now anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
well, I'll never know.
I last watched this a few weeks ago. I thought that he had succeeded, he had succeeded in solving it, but it was too late. He was too close to the ground, crashed, and died anyway. He never solved the problem.
Figured out what he thought was the solution to the final logic puzzle. He's about to enter it.
Was the solution to the final logic puzzle. He's about to enter it into verification, and a half-damaged Cyberman drags him up the corridor and shoots the computer.
Oh, because
making him unable to enter it.
He died pretty much of his own foolishness.
His last words is
so he died pretty much of his own foolishness.
His last words is him looking at the Earth coming up on him and going, "Well, now I'll never be able to know if I got it right."
What kind of wrecks the moment a tad is like...
What kind of wrecks the moment a tad is like... Or at least the fact that they don't go into music in the credits, like, that's good, but... They have, like, this tiny little bit of music just before it goes to credits, so it's got this weird cut with the audio, and it's like... Probably should have left that whole last scene.
Well, I think the change to removing the music from that was done at the last minute.
I found that when I watched that the first time. I found that a bit
because I found that when I watched that the first time. I found that a bit jarring that it just goes. There's a. It was playing silent mostly for that, and then it gets into this really sad music right near the end, and then cuts. As the credits start going, and it's like, probably could have cut that little bit of music out.
Okay, who was it that mentioned the parallel between this crew and the crew of Alien?
I think that was Bill.
You want to know the irony of that?
Pieces of scenery.
Several pieces of scenery were recycled and redressed from the Nostromo.
Also, digital readouts that were done in the movie
digital readouts that were done in the movie were seen on the monitors of the Nostromo originally, and were reused for this episode.
No, this means that the BBC was saving money by recycling props.
No, this means that the BBC was saving money by recycling props.
I like my solution better.
Because I guarantee you,
Alien was directed by Ridley Scott, a very
Alien was directed by Ridley Scott, a very
I kind of think a war between the Xenomorphs and the Cybermen would probably be the most epic episode ever.
Not really. Acid Blood, I think, would actually go through Cyberskin.
Not really. Acid Blood, I think, would actually go through Cyberskin.
Alien skin.
Possibly,
now, Xenomorphs versus Daleks, that I would like to see.
Now, Xenomorphs versus Daleks, that I would like to see.
Sure, the Daleks will be able to get the first wave, but will they be able to handle the second wave?
Sure, the Daleks will be able to get the first wave, but will they be able to handle the second wave that comes immediately afterwards?
I'm just thinking the Daleks might. I'm just thinking the Daleks
and as the blood equals, they have at least one weakness against the Daleks.
No, see if there's enough aliens. No.
It would kind of depend on how.
No, see if there's enough aliens. No.
It would probably kind of.
They would be able to rush the Daleks eventually.
And also upon how they attack the Daleks too, because they don't always attack from the open either.
We have entire planet populated by xenomorphs.
We have below an entire planet populated by xenomorphs, and we're down below. We're bringing one Dalek. Let's see who survives.
The xenomorphs are fucked.
Which Dalek are we using? The special weapons Dalek. The xenomorphs are fucked.
What's that?
Have the Daleks ever destroyed a planet to exterminate someone?
What's that?
Have they destroyed a planet to exterminate someone? I don't think they destroyed entire planets for one person.
They haven't yet.
Oh, to destroy a certain species? Oh, I'm pretty sure they've done a couple of planets.
Oh, to destroy a certain species? Oh, I'm pretty sure they've done a couple of planets.
They've not done it on camera.
They've not done it on camera per se, but they have destroyed other worlds.
Not even Time War. They've probably done it off camera during
Not even Time War. They've probably done it off camera during the course, but you know, children's show not mentioned.
The Third Doctor era.
During the Third Doctor era, the Daleks have flunkies called the Ogrons.
Here's a
that
question:
look like
what would
giant
happen if a facehugger
gorilla
got
men
inside the Dalek casing?
I don't think it could find anything to face hug.
Or like,
I don't think it could find anything
Dalek,
to face hug.
A Dalek was damaged. It opened up. The mutant was exposed to the air. A facehugger got in, and became a Dalek alien inside the casing.
It also depends on what model Dalek too.
True.
It also depends on what model Dalek, too.
Then again, yeah, I'm like, considering how many, especially like, I'm kind of picturing this in my head as like a comic book, and a comic book writer would literally mutate the casing into some sort of giant xenomorph Dalek, which isn't what would really naturally scientifically happen, but it would be cool to see.
It makes no logical sense. No, it makes no sense at all.
It makes no logical sense.
No, it makes no sense at all.
Looks cool, though.
Little black Dalek that spits all kinds of sticky drool and has
Little black Dalek that spits all kinds of sticky drool and has acid blood whenever you clip it.
I don't try to think about things like that, to be honest.
I keep the aliens and the Doctor Who universe separate, please.
I keep the aliens and the Doctor Who universe separate, please.
Gallifrey is still noble and pure.
Fanfiction.
Gallifrey is still noble and pure. If something like the alien menace popped up, the Time Lord would have said no.
Entire planets and threatened to overtake the galaxy.
Which does. Kind of does. So you thought Rassilon would have gotten right on top of that,
Kind of does. So you thought Rassilon would have gotten right on top of that, man.
I've killed Arachnos.
I've taken care of the great vampires. I've killed Arachnos. Next time, taking out the Xenomorphs.
When the people of Gallifrey elected Rassilon Emperor.
Maybe what he did was
the people of Gallifrey elected Rassilon Emperor.
Drop the Yautja off on their home planet and let them run wild. Figured let them fight each other to death. Anyway, I think we're getting off topic.
Oh, we're very off topic. I think we left topic.
We're very off topic.
We left topic somewhere back in the tundra regions over beyond.
And you kind of took it and...
I mentioned a production aside, and you kind of took it and drove it to Cleveland.
But yeah, so... As I mentioned earlier, this was the first outing of David Banks.
So, as I mentioned earlier, this was the first outing of David Banks as the cyber leader.
I think he was pretty good in there.
What'd you all think of David Banks?
I quite like him so far.
He is definitely pushing to get the Cybermen to be up there with the Daleks. Because
he is definitely pushing to get the Cybermen to be up there with the Daleks.
Because I don't think anybody had as much influence on the Cybermen in the 80s as David Banks did. Do you agree with me on the fact that he's a large ham?
For an emotionless robot, yes.
He can be a ham, yes.
He has two catchphrases.
For an emotionless robot, yes. He's a huge ham.
He has two catchphrases he developed during the 80s. The first, of course, is excellent. The second is eradicate them.
For an emotionless cyborg, he was rather emotional.
Well, yeah. What was it that he said is like...
Well, yeah,
somebody asked the doctor, are they all this devoted? And I think the doctor says,
somebody asked the doctor, are they all this devoted? And I think the doctor says, compared to some of them, he's downright flippant.
Wasn't revenge one of his motivations for trying to take the doctor alive?
A tiny hint of revenge.
Actually, yeah, that's the only reason you would ever want to take the doctor alive.
Of revenge, yes.
If you followed logic dictates destroy the Time Lord before he destroys you.
It's kind of one of the problems I have with the Cybermen in the 80s.
It's kind of one of the problems I have with the Cybermen in the 80s. Go through and they're claiming to be these emotional or emotionless logical machines.
Bond villain.
And they act like your stereotypical Bond villain.
I mean, there's probably a trope for it. You see that often enough that things will claim to be completely emotionless until, you put revenge within their grasp, and all of a sudden you see, just how much emotion they don't believe they have.
Maybe all their emotional inhibitors. That's one thing got messed up.
Maybe all their emotional inhibitors.
That's one thing
got messed up.
From the 2000s era Cybermen.
You don't get any actual expression of emotion.
You don't get any actual expression of emotion.
Something of a human still kind of squiggling around.
Yeah, but you also have to remember there's supposed to be something of a human still kind of squiggling around there. I mean, you can even see the mouth move a little bit on these older ones.
Yeah, I know.
You see a little bit of the organic shit even when they talk.
Yeah, I know. Actually, that kind of freaks me out a bit.
I quite liked it. I thought that was actually a good effect.
The 80s Cybermen suits.
I just start watching the chin.
Is the fact that I stop watching the Cybermen suit, I just start watching the chin.
Kind of a freaky image if you
because there's something still alive in there, and that's kind of a freaky image if you really think about it.
Such low budget.
Although one thing,
which is actually very awesome for such low budget.
It kind of weakens the point of the Cybermen to me, like in things like, I believe the Pandorica opens, that's supposed to be a Mondas Cyberman, but you can see it perfectly functioning with no organic parts. So it's like, okay, at that point you're defeating the purpose of a Cyberman and just becoming a race of androids.
Oh, they should have still had the organic brain.
Well, they should have still had the organic brain.
About, like, the detached
in the Pandorica
well,
opens,
I think he's talking about like the detached Cyberman head.
Its organic parts had died, the head had come off and everything else, and it was just looking for a new host, but at the same time shooting things and fulfilling all of its purpose.
Yeah, okay, I had forgotten
about that. And actually opened up the head and a skull popped out. And it was still
yeah, okay, I had forgotten about that. I think I'd repressed that.
About that, Bill?
Yeah. But you want to know what else about that, Bill? Moffat.
Just
Moffat.
That's our problem. Another thing I noticed about this, noticing that this was
that's our problem.
Another thing I noticed about this, noticing that this was now 80s production Doctor Who, was the fact that you got to see corpses.
But rather gross,
and not just any corpses,
after the androids shot
but rather gross, disgusting remains after the androids shot people.
Oh yeah, you got to see the puddles of squick.
Started happening that started to get complaints
this was part of what started happening that started to get complaints against Doctor Who by certain parties in the 80s.
Yeah, but this was the point that this stuff started showing up frequently.
Yeah, but if this was the point that this stuff started showing up frequently.
The name of this person.
That
lucky that someone wasn't.
I'm trying to remember the name of this person.
Yeah, boobs and blood all over the place.
I believe even I'm brain farting on his name. I believe even Peter Davison actually brought it up a couple of times in things I've heard him talk about, and he's like, do I believe that TV violence encourages kids to actually do real world violence? Hell no.
That would actually be kind of awesome.
Like a straight up either like a slasher film or a haunted
that would actually be kind of awesome.
Where the Daleks are the main villain. Like that would
just think Alien.
It would work perfect. Yeah, Alien with a Dalek.
Just think Alien.
Part of the problem, the estate of Terry Nation.
Well, part of the problem, the estate of Terry Nation.
Outside of Doctor Who.
As of this moment, we will never see Daleks outside of Doctor Who.
Terry Nation's dead.
Unless you can convince Terry Nation otherwise.
Terry Nation's dead.
I mean, the lawyers behind...
The lawyers have stated that at this point they are only going to be using the Daleks in Doctor Who.
Years after Doctor Who does, obviously.
It would be at least 2063.
It would be at least 2063.
Yeah, but
that's the problem.
The way Disney keeps beating licenses and...
Yeah, that's the problem.
Tied together.
No, it's still, though, public domain is still 100 years, generally.
No, it's still, though, public domain is still 100 years, generally. For concept.
For a likeness.
Not for individual films.
Yes, for having his likeness. Their likeness, yes.
Yes, for having his likeness.
Of course, if I put a salt and pepper shaker in a movie and had someone just mysteriously die in front of it...
Actually, I'm not even sure it's 100 years. The estate of Arthur Conan Doyle.
Actually, I'm not sure it's 100 years. The estate of Arthur Conan Doyle is still
Sherlock Holmes without permission.
Managing to slap lawsuits on people that use Sherlock Holmes without permission.
How does the Asylum get away with it?
What's that?
Flying under the radar. I know the fact that Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Flying under the radar. I know the fact that Star Trek: The Next Generation
on the holodeck,
had a couple of Sherlock Holmes-inspired episodes on the holodeck, and they got slapped with a lawsuit.
As of 1987, was still slapping lawsuits.
So that estate, as of 1987, was still slapping lawsuits.
Maybe it depends on
how much money you throw I'm not sure. Maybe they did pay them off. Maybe it depends on how much money you throw at it.
From the live-action movies, part of that copyright. Or only the actual lasers from...
To originally throw real fire until
they were.
Went,
I think those were actually meant to originally throw real fire until someone actually went, you could hurt somebody with that.
Obviously, Daleks shooting lasers are part of the main copyright, but I like Daleks shooting, fire extinguishers.
Just the fact that you have Daleks there in general,
Bill. Of course,
if you have a Dalek
just the fact that you have Daleks there in general, Bill. I believe.
Yeah, if you have a Dalek shape.
Of course, I understand that. Once again, it's my fault that we have drifted horribly.
And plunger.
Yes, because you go sideways.
I do. That's kind of the way my brain works.
Yes, it is.
Because you go sideways.
That's why people find it hard to... Well, people used to find it extremely hard to just have a simple conversation with me because I wouldn't explain the sideways until my brain was traveling.
I don't explain where my brain goes. I just follow it. And go, ooh, look at the shiny.
It's
I don't explain where my brain goes. I just follow it and go, ooh, look at the shiny.
So, what did bring this off topic?
You trying to make Dalek stuff.
Was it Dalek? No, I don't think it was. Was it
You
Dalek
trying to make
aliens or
Dalek
something
stuff.
else? Oh, no. God damn
Dalek
it.
aliens.
Cybermen
Dalek
being
aliens.
But yeah, going backwards. Where did we leave off?
Man,
I don't know.
going
I had asked you your opinion on David Banks, and that got onto Cybermen
I don't know.
costumes.
I had asked you your opinion on David Banks, and that got onto Cybermen costumes.
I don't remember us about.
And I think we started going sideways from
We're
there.
talking about the face mask.
I don't remember us about going on about Cyberman costumes. Maybe that
You're
was...
talking about the face mask and the fact.
Oh yeah, I did mention creepy
Jin moving.
moving, yes.
I don't.
That's actually the one thing I wish they would have kept for the newer doll.
I don't. I honestly don't.
Squick of it, Matt. It distracts
Come on,
me
we
from
could use a little
watching the
extra
rest of it 'cause
squick.
I'm
They can
watching
handle
the
it.
That's not the squick of it, Matt. It distracts me from watching the rest of it because I'm watching the chin.
There's something still alive in there.
There's something still alive
a
in there.
dozen people dancing naked in the
There could be,
background.
you know,
a
A dozen people dancing naked in the background. I wouldn't notice because I'm watching the freaking chin.
You're
Not that
easily
distracting.
persuaded away by it.
Just
I think
me.
that's why they made that more opaque
You're
on
easily
the non-leader
persuaded
models
away by
in
a
later
simple
I think that's
shit.
why they made that more opaque on the non-leader models in later episodes, Attack.
Throughout this episode.
Actually, I think that was kind of partially due to the fact that they made it opaque throughout this episode because there's technical difficulties with the costume. Like at one point, the voice modulator actually has a device in the helmet and it slid down next to his chin at one point. So they sprayed
always
something
had those
opaque
issues.
and then they kind of covered the chin with some extra stuff just for the sake of doing something there to hide it.
Always had issues like that, Matt. I know that during the Five Doctors,
They used
they're
it.
wearing moon boots, and apparently they would get caught in the fog that they were filming in, and they wound up walking around with like plastic bags on their feet.
This is the first time they used this model, so this is the first time that I had those technical difficulties.
But again, this is the first time they used this model, so this is the first time that I had those technical difficulties.
Oh yeah, but even when you go up to like Silver Nemesis, where they've only done a slight redo of those, they had somebody that the wire for the microphone or the earpiece for him. The wire had not gotten the insulation on it. So he had been caught in the helmet while the thing cut into his ear. And he's sitting there screaming and there's blood pouring out from the side of the helmet and they're trying to get it off and it's stuck. I heard this horror story from the making of Silver Nemesis.
Why is Dr. Who
Which, by the way, you can watch on YouTube if you look for it.
Because of those many horror stories and the constant squick that old school actually had.
Because of those many horror stories and the constant squick that old school actually had, even for low budget.
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about the bloody puddle that was the corpse of the...
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you hadn't seen that before in Doctor Who, at least not in such absolute detail. I mean, at one point you can see the bloody puddle and you can see something that used to look like it might have been flesh, and you can see the person's name tag in the puddle.
Yeah, and it's just you're looking at that, and, you know, you're
grotesque
almost want to lose your
bubbling
lunch.
going on.
Yeah, and it's just, you're looking at that and, you know, you almost want to lose your lunch.
Watch this. Let me put it that way.
I'm glad I
watched very good for a low budget.
Watched this. Let me put it that way.
For such a low budget.
I will continue to note that that's pretty darn good for such a low budget.
I don't know if she's still active or not.
But there was this lady at the time. I don't know if she's still active or not. Her name is Mary Whitehouse.
Conservative political activist.
And she was a political activist, conservative political activist in England.
Early to mid 80s.
During the late 70s and early to mid 80s, and apparently somewhere along this area is the point that Doctor Who got put on her radar. And I don't think they managed to have an episode through the Peter Davison era that didn't have Mary Whitehouse calling them up. If they did, it was probably Black Orchid, but I think she called them on that one too.
But it was, stuff like that.
It's called nitpicker's disease.
But it was, stuff like that eventually.
That's right. That's right. I remember.
They're trying to show you they could do more, but you keep trying to limit them.
Blood all over the screen.
She died in 2001, so. Yeah, she was big on.
She died in 2001, so.
Just like that. Another thing that she had.
Yeah, she was big on
and I think
censor.
This was one of the first times we saw this.
Just like that. Another thing that she had issues with, and I think this was one of the first times we saw this. Is at the very end of the episode, after he had used Adric's Gold Star for Mathematical Excellence and scraped it off into the chest plate of the Cyber Leader, the Doctor winds up grabbing his gun and shooting the Cyber Leader until he's dead.
Oh, and then a second Cyberman as well. Actually, no, I think
that was Nissa Tegan that shot the second Cyberman. He was busy trying to rescue Adric.
I'm trying to get the TARDIS
and failing because the console was too damaged.
But
this was the first time I think we'd actually seen the Doctor pick up a gun and use it.
And did people used to argue that apparently he never has?
Yeah.
Never even held one.
And yet people used to argue that apparently he never has.
Oh,
hell, never even held one.
No, he used a gun during a Dog episode during the Third Doctor.
Really?
Yeah, he vaporized one of the Dalek lackeys.
John Pertwee, so quite frankly,
I remember this. I remember seeing that episode.
Well, yeah,
it's John Pertwee, so quite frankly, John Pertwee gets away with it.
He's Action Doctor, he gets away with it.
Well, yeah, he is the...
Sounds like one of those episodes I hadn't seen.
He's Action Doctor, he gets away with it.
It's only
It only exists because John Pertwee.
Anyway,
But yeah, at this point is when you start seeing this darker turn in Doctor Who. It started
to what led to it being canceled in the 85-86 season.
Show, dang it.
It's rubbish.
And eventually, when it was restarted in 87, Word from on High was lighting up.
And eventually, when it was restarted in 87, Word from on High was lighting up on that kind of stuff. Which is why when you had the Seventh Doctor start, he was all spoons and slapstick.
But you can almost see the start of it
until they decided that really didn't work.
And it gets progressively worse.
So you can almost see the start of it here.
Through the next couple of seasons,
and it gets progressively worse throughout the Davidson run through the next couple of seasons. Really culminating, I think, in Resurrection of the Daleks.
Lots of boom.
Oh yeah, Resurrection was the big one.
Which I think was another soured episode.
Lots of boom.
I've never watched
which I think was another soured episode.
Although they cut some stuff.
I've never watched that episode. That episode's awesome. Although they cut some stuff.
The speech between the Doctor and Davros. That episode.
They actually cut off a bit of the speech between the Doctor and Davros.
And it's Eric Soward episodes that get that particular
Who wrote this? Yeah, this was an Eric Soward episode. And it's Eric Soward episodes that get that particular kind of gritty gumminess.
They should have had more of his Actually, no, I'm not as fond of his acting style.
In other words, he's awesome. They should have had more of his
Actually, no, I'm not as fond of his acting style.
I read one of his Doctor Who books that he wrote.
I've read one of his Doctor Who books that he wrote.
Stuff in there that was kind of
that was, an original. And yeah, there was some stuff in there that was kind of twisted.
Resurrection of the Daleks, so you can almost tell it's that same gritty
Yeah, Saward also wrote Resurrection of the Daleks, so you can almost tell it's that kind of same gritty style.
Look at the helmet, like the guards.
Little children working for the Daleks. That's not entirely.
Look at the helmet, like the guards that are going down in the tunnels are wearing in the first episode. And later, you will see these same helmets recycled to be used by the cast of Airwolf.
But yeah, he likes the kind of the Gestapo look for his soldiers.
But yeah, he likes the kind of the Gestapo look for his soldiers.
Episode of Earthshock, there's that bit where there's always something
I
like
find it funny that in the first episode of Earthshock, there's that bit where there's always something like that in every I'd say pretty much everything sci-fi where it's kind of like, oh, what's this flashing thing? This probably means something. Nah, let's not tell anyone until shit gets real.
It's just like, oh
yeah, this has been happening.
It's like, is that important?
It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, this thing had been flashing. It's like, is that important?
Something's flashing. Oh, it's a bomb.
Well, yeah.
If you
it's always kind of funny, but
if you disable every bomb.
Well, yeah. It's like it's always kind of funny, but yeah. It's like.
Or at least the first episode would have ended faster. Oh, that's what I read.
Or at least the first episode would have ended faster.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I read. The novelization of the 1985 radio play Slipback. Yeah. That was a little, yeah.
Yeah, his writing style is dark and a bit gross.
Yeah, his writing style is dark and a bit gross.
Cyberman, really.
He's very dystopian, almost cyberpunk in his writing style.
He's very dystopian, almost cyberpunk in his writing style.
For Cybermen, it's actually not a bad thing, to be honest.
Which again, for cyberpunk, actually, for Cybermen, it's actually not a bad thing, to be honest.
A bit.
It definitely helps lend more menace to the Cybermen themselves. A bit.
I don't know.
Because otherwise, you could get too used to these robots.
Great on me.
To
be honest, otherwise you just get too used to the Cybermen. Oh, they're just robots. No.
To be honest, I always just get too used to the Cybermen. Oh, they're just robots. No. There's something else to be more horrified inside of those quote-unquote tin cans.
And it bled and flesh came out.
No, because there's not enough of that left.
Depending on where you kill them.
No, because there's not enough of that left.
Watch the 6th Doctor episode, Attack of the Cybermen.
Before you do this, watch the 6th Doctor episode, Attack of the Cybermen.
Under various stages of cyber conversion.
The cyber controller's room, you can look at people under various stages of cyber conversion.
Cyber converted and failed.
And you deal with some people that were partially cyber converted and failed.
I hope it makes a little bit more sense than Cyberwoman.
It does.
The limbs.
I don't really think they explain those two guys very well, do they? Ooh, Biggs and Stratton.
I don't really think they explain those two guys very well, do they?
Never mentally converted.
Ooh, Biggs and Stratton?
I don't think they were actually human.
Who that were starting to convert, but they never mentally converted.
Well, I don't think they were actually human.
The process did not work on them for whatever reason.
For a start, yeah, I guess.
But it was just the process did not work on them for whatever reason.
I'm trying to remember because I have not actually watched this episode in a few years.
Again, I'm trying to remember because I have not actually watched this episode in a few years. I used to have it on tape when I taped it off of PBS. And I have not had my tape collection in almost a decade.
I haven't seen that episode in at least 3 to 4 years, so yeah, it's been a little while, so then it's probably, I only watched it once, so it's a little foggy to me too.
But, yeah, I like watching that one, and I like watching the Saward
But yeah, I like watching that one, and I like watching the soured Resurrection of the Daleks because there's, it's the character Lytton gets his beginning in one and his end in the other.
Partially cyber converted.
Which, by the way, is how Lytton ends. He's partially cyber converted.
Make a compelling, effective story would it be if a companion ended up being fully converted to a Cyberman, and the Doctor had to put them out of their misery.
In the audio dramas.
That was actually done in the audio dramas.
Cyberman winds up meeting the Cyber Queen.
The Doctor winds up going into the far future of the Cybermen, winds up meeting the Cyber Queen, which turns out to be the future version of his companion. Oh God, what the heck was her name?
Was she a TV companion or an audio?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, she's an audio.
I suddenly cannot remember her name.
She's a. Was she with?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, she's an audio exclusive Doctor.
I think I actually have a
Was she with the Sixth Doctor?
Only in the audios.
Yeah, I think I actually have a DVD with images of one of their stories.
Hang on, I'll have her name in a moment.
Hang on, I'll have her name in a moment.
She's a professor that winds up traveling
with the Doctor
in the audio dramas.
But, yeah, she's a professor that winds up traveling with the Doctor in the audio dramas.
Oh, then again, we do have a companion who potentially turns into a Dalek.
The one where this happened was actually one that was done for the BBC website.
The one where this happened was actually one that was done for the BBC website
a while ago, and it's not on there anymore, I don't think.
A while ago, and it's not on there anymore, I don't think.
The BBC's Doctor Who website used to have a lot of cool stuff on there.
Which kind of sucks, because the BBC's Doctor Who website used to have a lot of cool stuff on there.
The aborted Ninth Doctor animated series. This was
the aborted Ninth Doctor animated series.
Made one episode, and
this was Richard E. Grant as the Ninth Doctor. Made one episode, and then the new series was announced.
Oops.
I remember saying, I think it was the first mention of Earthshock that I remember was when Nash
I remember saying, I think it was the first mention of Earthshock that I remember was when Nash reviewed the story after this, and the main problem he had with it was that they just sort of go, alright, well that was tragic, oh well, let's go and have some fun somewhere.
Let's try to get over this by going to somewhere fun and then going off on some random adventure, completely forgetting about Adric ever again.
Well, the next episode that's after this is Time Flight, which is the conclusion to the 19th season. It really should have been bumped to the 20th season, really, because Earthshock should have been the conclusion. This was worthy enough to be a season finale.
Well, yeah, that seems like you would want to do that. You would want to end a companion's death as the last episode of a season.
Because if you had left the 19th season on Adric's death.
Because if you had left the 19th season on Adric's death,
Heathrow Airport,
that would have been more of the hey look, Tegan finally got to Heathrow Airport, which was
so it wasn't let's go someplace
pretty much
fun.
Time
it's
Flight.
Like, okay, Tegan, you're now where you finally wanted to go.
So it wasn't let's go someplace fun. It's like, okay, Tegan, you're now where you finally wanted to go.
She did show up again next season.
Get out.
Whether or not we'll see you next season, or you're undecided.
Having lost her job.
And she did show up again next season.
A story or two.
After having lost her job.
Tegan's life really sucks.
Her life kind of tends to suck.
Tegan's life sucks.
Meets the Doctor.
Tegan's life really sucks. I mean, I've mentioned this before, but she starts in Logopolis where she loses her Auntie Vanessa to the Master's shrink doll making ray, whatever the hell you want to call it, her eliminator.
Falls off the top of him.
Afterwards, the guy that she just met, who unfortunately had the need to tell her, falls off the top of a freaking space radio telescope, changes into a younger guy.
Finds out an alien race of frogmen.
Then she's caught in this recursive time loop. Finds out an alien race of frogmen are basically trying to basically end the world. Gets her mind invaded by a malicious spirit.
Winds up with her friends indirectly causing the Great Fire of London.
A malicious spirit with a god complex.
Winds up with her friends indirectly causing the Great Fire of London.
Spends a little time in the 1920s. And then loses one of the few companions she has to
spends a little time in the 1920s. And then loses one of the few companions she has to dying to the Cybermen.
Rejoining the crew.
Before getting let off, spending a year, getting her cousin killed, rejoining the crew, losing her other friend who decides to stay and fight disease, having to team up with this dick
for most of that.
by the name of Turlo.
Trapped by your...
Yeah, he was a dick for most part.
He was a dick for most of that. Getting trapped by the doctor's own people in a death trap.
Earth gets shot up by Daleks. She was
and then watching a few friends you just made back on 1984 Earth get shot up by Daleks, she was basically like, okay, I'm done. Stick a fork in me.
Yeah, I think that was actually the first serial I saw with Tegan in it was the one she left in Resurrection of the Daleks, and it was the fact that she's just like, okay, yeah, I can't take any of this anymore. I don't care if I'm in the right location, I'm gone. It sort of runs off.
And the doctor's kind of like, yeah, kind of left home too because of the exact same reasons.
Mostly because, the first
Tegan was always the snipey one too. Mostly because, the first season spent with the Fifth Doctor, he's trying to get her home, and fails every single time.
Usually the companions are like, okay, we'll deal with it.
But, usually the companions are like, okay,
I think Ian and Barbara got a little
we'll deal with it.
vindictive during a
Tegan got vindictive.
At least early on.
Not like Tegan.
Mm-hmm.
Not like Tegan.
The evil spirit entity in the back of her brain came out a second time. Oh yeah, I forgot that one.
Oh, not to mention the evil spirit entity in the back of her brain came out a second time.
Oh yeah, I forgot that one.
I wouldn't have been surprised if she had wound up with a
She
fear
just has a
snake.
problem with snake spirits.
I wouldn't have been surprised if she had wound up with a fear snake.
Gets home, and the first thing she sees is a family member holding out a snake above her, and hits the ceiling.
She never used to act that way.
Pops out the house, screaming bloody murder. She never used to act that way to snakes before.
Yeah, her run of the show sucked.
Yeah, her run of the show sucked.
It was all really truly about her character.
Yeah, no.
She had a horrible time if it was all really truly about her character.
He was the script editor for when she ended.
And I largely blame Soward, just personally. He was the script editor for when she ended.
So yeah, part of his view kind of bled through into
He was
some of the other
being,
episodes.
Just FYI,
So yeah,
I got a warning
part
from
of his
the
view
computer
kind of
on
bled
this
through into
page.
some of the other
I'm gonna
episodes.
wrap up the official part of this soon.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, we talked about this episode as much as we can. Yeah. So I'd like to have your conclusions on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about this episode as much as we can.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have your conclusions on it, based on what we've talked about.
The plot more or less ran pretty decently.
The new Starman upgrade was a nice upgrade. The plot more or less ran pretty decently, I thought, and they did try to cover their bases as well as they could. I would only say that there's a bad actor here or there, but they didn't completely hamper the episode.
To see, how is the first Cyberman episode, and the only issue I see is I don't think they really get into detail of what the Cybermen are other than being horrible and technological, which I guess is sufficient, but they could probably have gone into a little bit more of what a
Cyberman they were only really trying to update the Cybermen for the 80s, not necessarily wanting to go through a whole new episode on what they were.
Well, they were only really trying to update the Cybermen for the 80s, not necessarily wanting to go through a whole new episode on what they were, where they came from.
Although they do hint at them being more than just robots a couple of times.
They used to be human. Would have,
Well, no, they were never human. Not in the original Doctor Who canon.
They were from another planet.
Well, no, they were never humans. Not in the original Doctor Who canon.
Of Earth that
they were from another planet of human-like beings.
I'm not as up to
Mondazian. I use the term Mondazian. At least that way we know they're not Earthlings.
Mondazian. Use the term Mondazian. At least that way we know they're not Earthlings.
Mondasian humans there.
The kind of issue I had with this is that I probably would have been
I think the only kind of issue I had with this is that
but just the fact that his death is
I probably would have been a bit more annoyed if I'd seen more of Adric beforehand, but just the fact that his death is just a bit of a wah-wah kind of moment.
This serial, I still think it was a fairly decent serial. I would say if Adric really did know that he was only trying to save the dinosaurs, it does color that ending a little differently for me, and I'd have to rewatch it to really let that sink in.
I don't think the people on the ship actually knew that they were going backwards in time.